My name is Caroline Rivera. I'm 32 years old, and today, for the first time, I've decided to share an experience that completely changed the way I see the world, especially the things we keep in our homes. Maybe you've heard of haunted objects. Maybe you think they're just old legends, exaggerations, or strange coincidences believed by superstitious minds. I used to think that too. As a historian, I always believed that objects carry stories, not curses. That an old doll, a broken mirror, or a stopped clock were just remnants of the past, not doorways to something else. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. Until that trip. Until I visited the Island of Dolls. I've always been fascinated by the line between reality and the supernatural. Even as a child, I was drawn more to the mysteries buried between the lines of books than the grand events carved into stone. What wasn't said, what was only whispered, called to me more than any documented fact. That's why I specialized in folk rituals, the nearly forgotten, half-superstitious gestures passed down through generations. Candles lit in windows, objects left at crossroads, silent offerings in abandoned places. All of it holds a power that official history refuses to acknowledge. During my research on rituals meant to appease spirits, one name kept surfacing, always whispered, always accompanied by nervous smiles and glances that never held your eyes. Isla de las Muñecas, the Island of Dolls. Located in Xochimilco, a network of ancient canals on the southern edge of Mexico City, the place still holds a kind of wild, untamed beauty. Colorful boats, trajineras, glide slowly over green waters, surrounded by floating gardens, vibrant flowers, and lines of trees that bend low to touch the murky surface. It's like drifting through a painting, full of life, full of tradition. But hidden among the little islands, there's a shadow. The Island of Dolls isn't marked with signs or carved trails. It doesn't announce itself. It just appears, like an error in the fabric of the world. The first thing you notice is something hanging from the trees, something swaying oddly in the wind. Only when the boat gets close do you understand. They're dolls. Hundreds of them. Old, mutilated, sun-bleached dolls soaked from years of rain. Eyes missing. Limbs torn off. Mouths half open, as if whispering forgotten secrets. Some have burned heads. Others are bound with rusted wire, like they tried to escape. And even in daylight, something feels wrong about that place. Something that makes you want to look away. To turn back. But I didn't turn back. I went. And I'm here to tell you what they had on that island. But first, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, because there's a new story like this every week, and you won't want to miss it. Now, get ready. I boarded a small trajinera, guided by a boatman named Emilio. A thin man, his skin hardened by the sun, a patchy beard, and eyes that had clearly seen more than they wanted to remember. He placed my backpack at the bottom of the boat, untied the rope, and we drifted off down the canal. The rhythm of his, or cutting the water, was hypnotic. The shores narrowed. The air grew heavier, filled with the scent of wet earth and rotting flowers. We passed a few rustic houses, where locals stood watching in silence. There was something in their eyes, a mixture of pity and quiet warning. Emilio rowed slowly, like time moved differently there. After a few minutes, he spoke. "Señorita," his voice was raspy, almost a whisper. "When we arrive, don't forget to leave an offering." I looked at him, puzzled. An offering? For who? He didn't smile. Didn't look at me. He kept his eyes ahead and said, "For the dolls." "And if I don't?" I asked, half laughing. This time, he did look at me. His gaze was hard, serious. The island doesn't like empty hands. That's just a story, right? I tried to lighten the moment. He shrugged. Maybe. He paused. Or maybe, that's why some people never came back. The words hung in the air, heavier than the heat pressing against my skin. Then, almost under his breath, he added that the locals believed the island was alive, that it feeds the dolls with the fear of visitors, that at night, you can hear whispers coming from the trees. And sometimes, those who break the rules feel the cold hands of something that shouldn't exist anymore. I laughed, nervously. Part of me still believed it was just a spooky story for tourists. But another part was beginning to understand that some places don't need you to believe in them to be real. That's when Emilio pointed ahead. "Meyer," he said. "She's already waiting." I looked up, and there it was, the Island of Dolls. Majestic. Still. Dark, like a predator waiting in silence. The dolls swung softly in the warm breeze, creaking as they moved. And for just a second, only a second, I had the feeling. that every single one of them was looking straight at me. Setting foot on that island felt like crossing an invisible line. The shift was immediate. The suffocating heat from the Xochimilco canals vanished, replaced by a damp chill that clung to my skin. The ground, covered in twisted roots and rotting leaves, gave slightly under my steps, as if the island itself was alive. And all around me, dolls. They weren't toys. They were fragments of something that had once been comforting, but was now twisted, corrupted by time, and by pain. Ragged cloth bodies, plastic heads melted by the sun, distorted into grotesque shapes. Glass eyes cracked, staring into nothing, or maybe at me. Split faces, open mouths, like they were screaming in silence. They hung from the trees like dead fruit. Some tied up with copper wire, others nailed directly into the bark. The wind slipping through the brittle branches made their bodies creak in an uneven rhythm, like they were trying to break free. The place smelled like rust and decay, like things that should never have been left behind. But the weight of the scene wasn't just in the rot. It was in the story. Back in the 1950s, a man named Don Julian Santana Barrera isolated himself on this very island. According to the legends of Xochimilco, Don Julian found the body of a little girl who had drowned in the canal. Haunted by guilt and fear, he began collecting old dolls from garbage, from the water, from nearby homes, and offered them to the girl's spirit. One wasn't enough. Not 100. For years, Don Julian hung dolls everywhere, one by one, until the entire island became an improvised shrine. A strange, disturbing altar to a soul that refused to rest. They say that, over time, he began hearing voices, that the dolls would move at night, that the girl was never truly satisfied and demanded more. In 2001, Don Julian died. Some say it was a heart attack. Others believe he drowned, in the exact same spot where he found the girl. And many believe the island took him back. Today, the locals of Xochimilco respect the island. They fear it. They say you must bring an offering when you arrive, or risk waking whatever still lives there. I remembered all of this as I walked across the uneven terrain. The weight of the doll's gaze is heavy on my shoulders. I didn't camp there out of carelessness. It was a choice. I knew very few people had the courage to spend an entire night on the island of dolls. And I wanted to understand, to feel it, to witness what was myth and what might be real. If I was going to study folk beliefs about haunted objects, I had to go beyond stories. I had to experience it myself. I'd arranged everything with Emilio before the trip. He would leave me with a small tent, water, and enough to get through the night. Once I'd unloaded my things, Emilio tied the trajinera back to the edge and turned to face me. His eyes, which had only seemed serious before, now carried something else. "Worry. Señorita," he said, voice low. "I'll be back at dawn." "What time exactly?" I asked, adjusting the strap on my bag. "When the first bird sings," he answered, crossing his arms. "And pray time passes quickly." "Don't worry." I smiled, trying to hide the tension rising inside me. "It's just one night." He didn't smile back. He simply stepped onto the trajinera and began drifting away. Right before disappearing into the canal fog, he called out, "Don't talk to them." "To who?" I shouted, though I already knew. He only pointed to the trees, to the dolls, and vanished into the mist. Now I was alone with the dolls, and the heavy silence that seemed to move, as if it were breathing alongside me. When the sound of Emilio's or faded into nothing, silence took over the island. But not the kind of silence you find in forests or empty fields where life still whispers. This was a dense, muffled silence, as if the very air had been locked in place. As if it, too, was holding its breath with me. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the rising tension, and began setting up my tent near a crooked tree, from which hung a doll with no eyes. The torn fabric of its face fluttered in the warm breeze, as if it were trying to speak. "It's just your imagination," I whispered to myself. "It's just your imagination." The sky, once golden from the setting sun, had turned deep blue, nearly black. Fog began to crawl slowly from the canals, coating the ground in a low mist that blurred the roots and shadows. A chill ran down my spine. I clicked on my flashlight and sat outside the tent, watching as the darkness thickened around me. That's when I heard it. A sharp crack, like a branch snapping, somewhere beyond the trees. I turned quickly, light beams sweeping the brush. Nothing. Only dolls. Hundreds of them. Still, swaying ever so slightly in the wind. But their eyes, the ones that still had them, seemed more open, more alert. I shook my head, trying to dismiss the thought. Deciding to walk a short loop around the clearing and take a few photos, like I had planned, I stepped carefully into the trees. Walking the island at night was one of the most unsettling experiences of my life. Every step made the ground creak beneath me. Every branch I snapped underfoot sounded like a scream muffled by earth. And the dolls, it was like they were moving. I'd turn in one direction, and swear that a doll hanging with its back to me was now facing forward. Glassy eyes wide open, mouth cracked in a crooked smile. The wind seemed to carry whispers, but not in any language I understood. I pushed forward, resisting the urge to run. I passed a tree where 3 dolls hung in a row. One of them, porcelain, remarkably intact, with rosy cheeks and bright blue eyes, seemed to follow me with its gaze. I walked past it, 3 steps, then stopped, turned slowly. It was now facing me directly, but I hadn't heard any ropes twist. No movement, no sound. It had just changed. Fear crept up my throat, choking me. I quickened my pace back to the tent, and then, as I passed the tree where I had left my little ribbon as an offering, I stopped in my tracks. The ribbon was gone. In its place hung a small doll, made of filthy scraps of cloth, and on its forehead someone or something had drawn a letter with charcoal. C. My initial. My heart slammed against my chest. It's a coincidence. It's a coincidence, I whispered, but panic was clawing its way up my spine. I ran to the tent, zipped it shut with trembling hands, curled into a ball, knees to my chest. Inside, the air was suffocating. Heavy, thick. It felt like the island was breathing with me. I sat still, listening to my heartbeat echo inside the thin walls of nylon. Then I felt it. A presence. Not a sound. Not a shadow. Just something. Right outside. Still. Waiting. Time moved strangely. The silence dulled my senses. My eyelids began to sink. I fought sleep. But at some point, I drifted off. I don't know how long I was out. I only know what woke me. First, a faint creaking, like stretched rope. Then a more distinct sound. Laughter. Children's laughter. Not loud. Not joyful. It was broken. Scratchy. Like someone trying to imitate children playing, but unable to hide the lifelessness in the sound. I opened my eyes with a jolt. The cold I felt didn't come from the air. It came from inside, because in that moment I knew I wasn't alone anymore. I didn't move. Every cell in my body was screaming at me to stay still. The laughter outside echoed through the trees, mixing with the uneven creaks of wood and rope. There was something wrong with it, something broken, like the ghost of joy dragged across centuries. My breathing was short, sharp, and then, layered beneath the laughter, footsteps. Light, quick, circling my tent. The soft thuds of bare feet on wet earth. Running, near, then far, then near again. Every now and then, a faint scratching grazed the nylon, like fingernails or claws, tracing the thin fabric that separated me from the outside world. The laughter multiplied. One voice, then 2, then dozens. Invisible children, playing some kind of grotesque game around me. My whole body trembled with restrained terror. I squeezed my eyes shut, covered my ears. But the sound was inside me. Time lost all meaning. In a desperate moment, I reached out and grabbed the watch I'd left on the tent floor. When I managed to focus on the glowing numbers, a shiver shot down my spine. 3:13 a.m. The time, so they say, when the veil between the living and the dead becomes thin. I swallowed hard. The air inside the tent had dropped suddenly. My fingers were stiff, icy. Then the tent wall pushed inward. Something small but strong had shoved it hard. Once, twice. The sound of the fabric stretching filled the air. I curled tighter, the stench of mold and damp earth flooding my nose. The laughter faded. The footsteps stopped. Only the sound of the wind remained, cutting through the trees like blades. I opened my eyes and looked toward the side of the tent. The faint moonlight, filtered through the fog, cast strange, blurred shadows. And there, just outside, I saw it. A small shape. Hunched. Standing close. No face. No eyes. Just a warped silhouette, like a doll discarded in the dirt. That presence radiated something I still don't have the words for. It wasn't anger. It wasn't hatred. It was emptiness, as if it was waiting. And suddenly, deep in my bones, I knew I wasn't welcome here. And whatever this thing was, it wasn't going to leave on its own. I stayed frozen, every muscle locked, until the shadow slowly dissolved. merging into the mist. The silence that followed was almost as unbearable as the fear that had just passed. And in that silence, I swear, I could feel the island breathing. Breathing with me. Breathing for me. I don't know how long I stayed there, curled up inside the tent, eyes wide open in the dark. The air felt still, but I could feel them. Eyes. Dozens of them. Watching me from the trees. From the shadows. From the dolls themselves. Every creak, every muffled whisper felt like a warning. I waited for something to enter the tent. To touch my foot. To take me. At some point, I don't know when, I fell asleep. And when I woke up, the world felt slightly different. Faint morning light was beginning to filter through the tent walls. The air was still heavy, but now it was breathable. The silence remained, but it no longer held the same intent. I reached for my watch. 5:07 a.m. The worst had passed. Slowly, I unzipped the tent and stepped outside. Everything felt frozen. Dew-covered branches, dolls swaying gently in the mist, the distant sound of birds, as if nothing, absolutely nothing, had happened. But I knew better. She was still there, waiting. At the shoreline, just as promised, Emilio stood with the boat. Still, expression unreadable, eyes locked on me. I climbed onto the triginera, my legs still trembling. Before rowing, Emilio finally spoke. His voice was different now, lower, quieter, heavier. "You're not the first to spend the night here," he said. I swallowed hard. "And the others?" I asked. He hesitated. Then, once a group came. 3 young men. Tourists. They wanted to film something. Laughed a lot. Said it was all fake. He paused. When I came back the next morning, only 2 of them were still here. My skin prickled. And the third? Emilio narrowed his eyes, as if reliving the memory. His tent was untouched, but inside there was a new doll, wearing the same jacket, same necklace. Did no one investigate? I whispered. He shook his head. "No one investigates the island," he said, firm. "She takes care of herself." I said nothing. My stomach twisted. Then he added, "The 2 who left weren't the same. One of them doesn't speak anymore. The other disappeared. Some say he lives alone now in a remote village. No lights, no mirrors, no dolls." He looked at me intensely. "What happens here stays here, but what you take with you stays too." The ride back was silent, heavier than words. But as we neared the dock, I couldn't resist. I turned back. One last look, and there she was, among the trees, among the dolls, a small figure, standing still, too still to be a trick of the mist. It was the shape of a child, motionless, watching. In that moment, I understood. The drowned girl, the one Don Julian tried to calm. She never left. Maybe she never wanted to. Maybe she's the force behind it all. The one that moves through the dolls, that fills their glass eyes, whispers through stitched mouths, pulls the living into her fractured world. I went home, but I didn't come back the same. For days, I couldn't sleep. I avoided mirrors, avoided being alone, feared touching any doll, even by accident. It wasn't just trauma. It felt like I'd brought part of the island back with me. The smells, the muffled voices, the chill, the sensation that something was still watching me. Today, I still study haunted objects, but with a different perspective. I know now, with every fiber of my being, that objects can carry things. Not just memories, but energy, emotion, pain, presence. Because when something is abandoned in a moment of fear, or grief, or death, a part of it lingers. And sometimes it refuses to leave. Today I understand. Today I believe. And every time I see a doll, I remember the eyes that never close. That was today's story. If you made it this far, let me know what you thought in the comments. Also, tell me if you've ever heard of anything similar happening near where you live. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There are plenty more chilling stories coming your way. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.